Here.
Bastian.
Here.
Danicourt.
Here.
Knauer.
Here.
Tidings.
Here.
Nursinger.
Here.
Valentine.
Here.
Sangster.
Here.
Visor.
All right, we got minutes
Yes.
from the 8th and the 22nd.
Minutes from the 8th and the 22nd were sent out for everyone's review.
Make a motion to accept.
Which one?
22nd?
Why don't we do the 8th?
Let's start with the 8th chronologically.
There you go.
Moved, seconded. Any
Okay, Hetzke.
Aye.
Bastian.
Aye.
Danicourt.
Aye.
Knauer.
Aye.
Tidings.
Aye.
And if there's no comments for the 22nd minutes,
I'll move to approve the 22nd.
I'll second.
Okay, Hetzke.
Aye.
Bastian.
Aye.
Danicourt.
I wasn't here for that meeting. So
Abstain.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
staying.
Okay. Knauer.
Aye.
Tidings.
Aye.
On to miscellaneous.
Yep, so we do have a couple of miscellaneous items before our public hearing tonight. The first on the agenda is Qdoba. This is a revision we got last week. We sent it out to you guys. They were in previously, obviously, last year. Actually, we have two elements to go through tonight. First off, they were in last year, received their approvals this time. Last year, which means their approval is coming up for expiration. They've sent in a letter, Zach hit up first, asking for a 90-day extension while they work on the architectural piece and get that wrapped up. So the first request from Qdoba this evening is whether the board wants to grant that 90-day extension. The new law, it used to be 2 90-day extensions. The new law says you can ask for a 90-day extension, unlimited, as long as the board goes along with it. So that's the first item on the.
So can we entertain a motion?
I'll move.
Just
I'll make a
extend it.
motion for an extension.
I'll second.
Hetzke.
Aye.
Bastian.
Aye.
Danicourt.
Aye.
Knauer.
Aye.
Tidings.
Aye.
Okay, the second item is subsequent to the original approval. The board approved an original architectural style. They have subsequently come back with a revised scheme for their business, a new corporate brand. They came before this board twice now. They came back, originally it would have been November, December. The board wasn't supportive of it at that time, said they wanted to see some changes. They came back last month. The board, again, wasn't happy with what they had, so actually issued a denial on that, and pending if they wanted to come back with a further submission. So they've come back, submitted these changes tonight, and are again asking, is this consideration of the board, or are you willing to accept these revisions? We've seen the tile, I believe they're showing as the blue color. The other colors are still in play if the board has a preference. We've seen the wood batten strip at the top. It's a much smaller, compact piece with that. We've seen the Qdoba yellow color, and then they've minimized, I believe, one of those screens. They're calling them for the displays. As we've said before, those screen displays or the pictures would be considered signage under our code, so that piece of it would have to go to the zoning board no matter what. So I guess the question for this board is, are you happy with this new revised style from what you've seen in the last months? We did give you a letter from PRC. PRC is still not excited about this design. It doesn't feel that it meets the character of the neighborhood and those around it. There was some sightings to the board's architectural design standards, but it's up to this group here as whether they're happy with this design or not.
Any thoughts? Do you want to entertain this?
Can we see the original and the last two iterations along with this one?
Iteration, and approved.
The approved iteration.
One moment. I usually have this stuff home.
Approved was a late 13 application.
Let's call it, not that one.
There we go.
So that's what the board approved.
And if I go back, our last round. Oh, come on, let's go. You can do it. Sorry for the technical error.
It's lagging and it's,
It's a big file. Okay, no, it just doesn't like me. Hi. Let's jump in here.
Oh, well, he's bringing that up.
Jumping around. So this was the first time. After the approval, this was the first time we saw it. Was this?
The students do glass and blue tile, and
so the similar blue tile, the similar materials, similar style elements, they've tried to consolidate those down, reduce some of that woodwork up at the top. Took out the garage door, took out some of the metal screening that has the similar blue tile and similar materials. That's the style and the new corporate look that they're going for. And then that's what is currently before the board this evening. This is the latest rendition of they've come back with after listening to the board's discussions.
I believe last time we met though, we said that they needed to get closer to the original iteration, right? The original
we did.
renderings
yeah.
in some way, and this really doesn't, to me, look any different. It's
I
a little
just-
less of the wood accent pieces, and that's really all that I see is different.
I would tend to agree. I agree with the PRC memo.
Okay. So, I guess we issue another letter, vote.
So there'll be a vote to issue a letter of,
This will be a denial vote of
Yes.
this architectural change, and then it'll be up to them to either build what was previously approved, or, I guess if, I don't know, I mean, they own the property, they're paying rent, they're paying the mortgage on the property, paying the taxes, so I assume they want to get going. I know they're looking for this new corporate style. That's obviously not what the board originally approved, and so I guess it'll be a vote, for denial on this, and then it's up to them to decide or go back to corporate and decide if they want to build what was originally approved and get started or not.
We got a motion?
Make a motion to deny.
A second.
Hetzke,
Aye.
Bastian,
Aye.
Danicourt,
Aye.
Canower,
Aye.
Titans.
Aye.
Okay, next item up is Home Depot. Home Depot has approached us and wants to take out some of the curbing in the front of the building. There's some landscape areas that was originally approved by the board. Zach and Doug and I took a trip the other day to go out and take a look at it. Zach's kind of highlighted up those areas, trying to have some green space in the front. They've stated that they have some issues with people leaving carts and things in those spaces. We took pictures, and it appears more that, I know it's winter and people may not leave their carts as much as they do in the summertime, but it looks more like stacking room. It was pretty lined up as stacking is what the store has done. And
That's the other
then
tree.
the piece on the left, it looks like a foot and a half high curbing. So I'm kind of surprised if somebody leaves their cart in that or on that. It looks like the trees are fairly well established. So
Right.
they've asked to take those out. They just want to make them paved. They want to make them concrete. I'm sure it's less maintenance for them, but
They get rid of the trees?
Yeah, they just want to tear everything out and
Concrete
tear it all
all
down
over.
and just concrete the whole thing.
I wasn't on the planning board when this was approved, but I gotta believe that was put there to break up the size of the building.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the trees do that.
And the trees, I mean, it's not spring, you can't see that they're in bloom, but from just looking at them, they look healthy,
Gotta
they
be
look sizable.
Pretty good
They've-
size.
They've grown up pretty well.
If you want to see it.
Okay.
It's hard to see with the snow cover, but, you know,
I
we
kind
had
of did
some
Google
concerns
Street
about.
View of what it looks like.
I think it looks
against the
nice.
building.
Yeah, my opinion is if you remove them, then you've got that large expanse of building that
Right.
they were trying to avoid putting in the first place. That's why the plantings are there.
They've taken out some of the trees on the far end by the
Walgreens.
no, the greenhouse area. On the other end, they came in last year and said that some of those were dying, and the tree wells, which are small, so they've taken some of those out, and I don't know if those were ever replaced or not.
No,
So it's going to be
they were
pretty-
storing stuff down there for a while. They probably killed it with all the stuff they were storing down there.
And they've expanded, so it's quickly becoming pretty barren in front of the building.
Can that be, was that as a condition of approval? Part of the approval?
Yeah, it was part of the site plan approval was to add the
we-
green space in there, so that's why it's.
We could have the zoning department or Harold and Tom go.
We can have them go back and look at that, but that's why it's before this board
Take a
tonight is
look at
to.
things and put the trees back maybe.
Yeah, on the greenhouse side.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Were those the ones that were in
I'm not
pots?
No, there was,
Are they
they had them
island?
sunken in with some the tree grates around them.
Oh,
The
okay.
landscaper guy came in and said they were having,
Yes.
the trees were dying because of salt or other reasons, so I think they were looking to take those out, but I don't know if
Do we need a motion on this?
yeah, we should.
It's a vote for a letter. of-
Carrie.
I'll make the motion for denial.
I'll second.
Okay, Hetzke,
Aye.
Bastian,
Aye.
Danicourt,
Aye.
Canower,
Aye.
Titans.
Aye.
Sure you want to be here tonight?
Okay, this actually appeared before the town board last night. The town board referred it back to the planning board because this was actually approved by this board. I believe the Fox Hill Section 6 was in 2003. Fairview Crossing, this was later, this was 6 or 7.
6.
But as part of that, this is Fairview Crossing here. There's a cul-de-sac at the end of it. As AJ had recollected, originally, I think when Montrose had it, it was a originally
Road
proposed
going.
connection out to Watson Hole, or to Watson Road. They eliminated that, had a cul-de-sac on it. But part of that, they had that, what is now dashed-in sidewalk out to Watson Road. The developers approached the town and said he's having trouble selling lot 610, 612, and 611 on the Watson Road side, which are all his pieces, due to having that sidewalk that people have concerns about it next to their home. So we talked with him and said, okay, but what about the rest of the neighbors in the neighborhood? Do they want to get out to Watson Road, or would they like to walk? So he went out and petitioned the rest of the neighbors, and that is also in your packet tonight. Is he got 28 signatures of those neighbors saying that no, we don't want the sidewalk or feel it's necessary out to Watson Road. So the town board would ultimately have to abandon that property because that's home strip, and some of those say FedEx because he still owns the lots on them, so those are in his control. So ultimately, it's up to the town board because that was going to be an owned strip out to Watson Road for them to abandon that. So it does have to go back to the town board, but they're looking for a recommendation from this board since this board originally approved it. Speaking with the FedEx, they would compensate the sidewalk that's lost there. If that was eliminated, there are what's highlighted in yellow, a couple of lots short on Watson Road, a sidewalk that's not in front of existing homes. So they would, in lieu of putting the sidewalk from the end of their cul-de-sac out to Watson Road, install that sidewalk on Watson Road instead of that.
That would connect it too, because
That would
they make
connect
it continuous down
to Parrington.
to Barrington.
Yes. So that would complete a piece on the side of Watson Road. So that's basically item number one. There's a couple other pieces in play that may eventually come back to this board. Zach, if you can, you're right, kind of drag over and up, is going north. His piece that's not built is Ashland Rise, where Zach has the hand is Ashland Rise Section 2, which was a town board
Yep.
incentive zoning project, which then also continues off to the east and ties into Fellows Road.
Goes around.
So as part of that, through incentive zoning, their lot sizes were a little bit smaller. So Mr. Fedek is coming in, looking to see if he could adjust his lot line so they more closely matched what was on the Ashland Rise side, which would get him one more lot on that piece. So the kind of the blue line shows where and how it matches with Ashland Rise. So he would just redo those ones there, leave the rest of the subdivision as it is, but potentially get one more lot into that. So this originally was not an incentive zoning application, it was zoning with incentive. So it's a little different than what we've done in the past. The town board would establish what that incentive is, and then it would come back to this board here as basically a normal site plan application. So that's just this. So the town board would decide if they're willing to accept this as an incentive. So this is more just an FYI to the board. You may see this come back with that modification, and then that cul-de-sac piece is always their preliminary overall. That part was there for the design.
And the sidewalk, and whatever.
The sidewalk, Ashland Rise, again.
Oh, sorry, stop there.
Over here. Ashland Rise was approved by the town board with sidewalks only on one side. So this is kind of a mishmash neighborhood. The piece to the west, Links Court and beyond, is what predates our sidewalk policy.
Right.
Then our sidewalk policy came in Fox Hill, I think it was section 4, saying you had to have sidewalks on both sides. So he's got sidewalks on both sides of the street. And then Fairview Crossing is back to one side, and then it's back to Ashland Rise is one side. So he's looking for a little fairness in that. Consistency. So looking at eliminating, which doesn't exist, the dashed part on that side, and then in the yellow installing the sidewalks that would tie into Ashland Rise, connect in there. And then we spoke today about having a little stub across, so at least it looks finished at the end of that. Get back at least to the road edge, and then cross, and then get to
Onto the other side.
the connection on the other side. So again, this piece is just an FYI to the board that when and if they get wrapped up with the town board, this will be back before you. So really tonight we just need a recommendation if the board is comfortable with eliminating the sidewalk at the end of the cul-de-sac. And basically it's just a letter back to the town board saying the planning board has reviewed it and is supportive or not supportive of that.
And they would place a sidewalk where instead?
The yellow strip over there
Finish this off.
that's on Watson Road, so there'll be frontage lots on Watson that are currently missing sidewalks.
Personally, given the choice between the two, I'd much rather see the yellow sidewalk, the Watson Road section completed.
I mean, that's a gap in the existing town's infrastructure. Those are pieces that.
Well, that's a much heavier traveled road than the cul-de-sac.
Well, absolutely, and
And so you're talking public safety, I would agree with that.
yep.
Do you know what the thoughts were when that original sidewalk was put into the
Yeah.
documentation?
I think the Trails Committee was strong back then. I think John was on the board and making as many interconnections. We had a lot of trails that went through backyards. And
Yeah, and originally it
Behind
was going
lots
to be
and-
connected, there was going to be a road. Instead of it being a cul-de-sac, it was going to be a road directly behind the houses to the north there, where that sidewalk is basically. And it was settled on the sidewalk, which,
Obviously, around that area, it's pretty much residential, there's no schools. The only,
no.
if it was a situation where there was a school, it would end up being a cut-through, whether the sidewalk was there or not, but I don't think that's the case.
yeah, there's not really any destination point from
Destination,
that.
yeah.
To get out of there, if it was a school, yeah, we'd probably have more concerns about making sure that
There
it's
was a
a safe
connection.
walk
That would
and a
be a
connection
quicker
for.
way for somebody who lives on Cali Ridge to get out to Watson Road if they wanted to walk to Tim Hortons or Wegmans or
Somewhere.
someplace like that. And there's one guy who's got to live down in Victor or something who walks to Wegmans to Burkill Road. He works in the deli department. The dude with the beard. But he's the only person I know that I see walking on a regular basis there.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't use that sidewalk. So,
They don't have a problem with it either.
Yeah, so it's the exact going up Ashland Rise. You can see the piece down below. So this is the last piece of into Kelly Ridge that would tie that in.
Yeah.
So they already have the sidewalks in one side, so it would just basically
Gap.
the town board would abandon that that strip would be an owned strip by the town, abandon that back to those 3 lots, and then in lieu of that, install the sidewalks on Watson Road. So we just need a motion to send a letter.
Let me ask you this, the homeowners along Watson, is there a right of way for a sidewalk?
It would be up to us as the town to obtain the easements for that.
Well, if the homeowner says no.
Yeah, there's like that one where it stops,
I mean,
right
we-
where the
we could-
cursor is. I don't know if that guy's gonna be a pain or not, I don't know that connection, but.
I mean, I've talked to them in the past. You know, we had targeted that for one of our sidewalk programs, so I've already started conversation with them. I can't say for sure that they're going to sign, but at least they know that sidewalks are planned for there, and you've had those.
So we're just making a motion to send a letter to the town board supporting this change.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's
I'll make a motion to.
the town board's action, and then
Second.
Moved and seconded. Tidings and Bastion.
Okay, Hetzke,
Aye.
Bastion,
Aye.
Danicourt,
Aye.
Canower,
Aye.
Tidings.
Aye.
Wow. 2 and 1 tonight. Or 1 and 2, however you want to look at it.
Is this what you're doing?
Yeah.
Oh, shit, my laser.
You do have your laser pointer.
Oh, yeah.
Right,
It's just special
You
for
have the toy and
that.
everything.
Take care, Christine.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thank you.
So you may see that back. The town board establishes,
In the warm
looks
weather.
at that lot configuration.
Yeah,
establishes
that's up to them.
incentives. Because that would be an incentive zoning. But again, it's zoning with incentive versus incentive zoning, so it does come back to this board eventually. So that's why we kind of shared that as an FYI.
Okay.
I believe that is all the miscellaneous items we
Yeah,
have.
ignore me. I'm just getting ready for after.
We have one public hearing at 7 o'clock.
Do you want to recess until then, or do we have anything to cover?
This is all the agenda
Dave, can
items
you
I
send me
have.
stuff tonight?
Okay.
Thanks. Chapel.
We will recess until public hearing starts at 7 o'clock. Good evening. Welcome to the February 12th, 2015 meeting of the Penfield Planning Board. As usual, we will start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have one item on our agenda this evening, a public hearing. The way the process works is the applicant will present their proposed project to the board and the audience. Once they finish their presentation, the board will ask questions and clarification for items of interest to us. After that, we open up an open forum to the audience. It's really what this is about, is getting public input for proposed development in the town. Once that's complete, we'll close the hearing, and we typically finish up in the back of the auditorium to finish up our business for the evening. So, Zach, if you could read the first application, first and only application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Application number 1, Adam Frosino, McFarland Johnson, 2525 Route 332, Suite 101, Canandaigua, New York, 14424. On behalf of Penfield Place Properties, LLC, requests under Articles 3-3-10, 8-8-2, and 9-9-2 of the Code for preliminary and final site plan subdivision and EPOD permit approval to construct a 15,600 square foot expansion to the existing healthcare building with associated site improvements on a 6.71 acre property located at 1700 Penfield Road and 1700-B Penfield Road. The properties are now or formerly owned by Penfield Place Properties LLC and are zoned BNR and R115. Application number 15P-004 SBL numbers 139.05-1-51 and 139.05-1-68. Go ahead, Adam.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and the board. First off, I just wanted to summarize what we had kind of already discussed at our December 11th meeting for the sketch plan. It's been a little while, so I figured I'll go back through and just summarize the project. And
Could you do me a favor and introduce yourself
Oh,
and
sorry.
give your address for the record?
Yep.
Thanks.
Adam Frosino with McFarland Johnson at the address of 2525 State Route 332 in Canandaigua, New York.
Great, now we're official.
14424. So the project we're discussing today is Penfield Place Nursing Home. It's owned by Hurlbut Care Communities. They own 11 local nursing homes in the Rochester area. This is one of them located in the town of Penfield. The existing building has 48 double occupancy beds in 24 different units. It's currently 16,700 square feet approximately. It's 32 parking spaces with 2 handicap spaces, and is almost 50 years old and is in need of some upgrades and to meet modern trends in nursing home facilities. That being said, the proposed project is to expand the nursing home as shown in the visuals and the materials that you were received by adding a wing off the back of the existing building, an L shape with some other alcove wings sticking off. This would create 24 or 26 new units that would allow for majority of the units to be single occupancy, and they would have up to 60 bed occupancy now, which is a 12 bed increase from the existing. The addition is 15,600 square feet. And it includes these new units as well as significant upgrades to the amenities for both the residents as well as the staff. Includes things such as training rooms, upgraded nursing stations, supply rooms, new laundry facilities, things of that nature. As part of our submission, our sketch plan submission, we received comments. I'd like to just kind of highlight some of those comments that were addressed. We addressed them all, and some of them I'll discuss a little further here. One was the projected staffing table. We provided that there's projected to be 34 employees maximum on site. That would be during the first shift of a weekday. We have submitted an application to the Zoning Board of Appeals for an expansion to an existing non-conforming use, as well as a variance to the 50-foot residential buffer for the proposed parking lot. And we are on the agenda for next week, a week from today, on the 19th. We did provide additional parking spaces on the east side of the building, as requested by the board, to look into if we could put any parking on the east side to supplement the parking on the west side. We added a paved fire access lane on the east side per the fire marshal's design standards. There are no impacts to the EPOD limits, with the exception of some minor grading of the lawn area that is currently lawn area and will continue to be lawn area, and it's within the 75-foot stream buffer. The property is in the process of being re-subdivided per your request, and that will be combining the 1700B parcel with the 1700 parcel to remove the landlocked status of that triangular shaped parcel. We're also in the process of getting easements for the existing sanitary sewer manhole that's located in the northwest corner of the property. Also, looking at getting into the drainage easement access for the pond north of the site. But I did also want to note at our last meeting, it was the understanding of everyone in the room that the drainage outlet structure was located on the applicant's parcel, but since then, we did do the subdivision survey out there, and the actual outlet structure is actually on the adjacent properties parcel, the residential property to the rear, by about 25 feet. The project will disturb approximately 0.93 acres, so a formal stormwater pollution prevention plan is not required per the DEC. However, stormwater practices were applied in conformance with New York State DEC Stormwater Manual, and the impervious was mitigated through infiltration practices and green infrastructure practices, which is the preference of the DEC, and that included rain gardens, landscape filter strips, as well as tree planting areas. We have reviewed the comments from the project review committee that were submitted for the preliminary final plans, the letter dated January 22nd. We have a draft letter addressing all these comments that will be submitted after the discussions tonight. The only items of concern that we saw on the the comments were the enclosures. There was a request from the town engineer that the enclosures would be the same material as the building material. The applicant would like to request that we maintain the current vinyl privacy material with landscaping in front of it as the enclosures for the HVAC systems and the emergency generator as shown on the elevations and in the 3D rendering. That's how they're shown. And I think that's all I had to add to what was previously discussed in December.
Thank you, Adam.
Yep.
Roseanne, would you like to
Sure.
begin?
So I just wanted to confirm, since you first came in, there really isn't a change in the size of the square footage. It's still 15,600 square foot, and then you're adding 12-bed increase.
That is
overall.
correct. That is
Nothing
correct.
has changed there.
Nothing has changed. Nope. The actual building footprint has maintained and stayed the same as the previous submission.
Okay. And then, do you have finishes there of what you're going to put on
We
the
do.
outside of
I'm
the building?
sorry, I didn't- So what's shown here, I don't know if you want to pass it around or just start over here.
Show us.
Sure.
These are examples.
You may want to grab a microphone over there, cordless, or
We can just
just
look.
describe it,
Yeah, we can just look at it.
and then maybe show it to the camera afterwards.
Yeah.
This is an old one. It's not the new one.
So what's being passed around is samples of the brick that would accent the mostly hardy board siding that would be installed, which is more of a residential feel to the rear of the building, which faces residential.
This would be very similar to the current.
Currently, it's mostly brick facade, and the rear would be a similar brick with hardy board as well.
So this brick facade is similar to the one that's existing?
Correct. It's
On the-
similar in tone and color, but it is just your standard brick. I mean, the building is almost 50 years old, so that's the standard bricks that were used then. So the back side would be a little bit more modern looking with the hardy board and brick kind of combination, which also gives it a little more residential look as opposed to less commercial.
And then what about the roofing? How is that going to match what's existing?
That will match existing, correct? Yes. That is asphalt shingles, and it'll match the existing in color and material.
Okay. And then, I didn't see, were there light plans submitted too for the outside areas?
The light plans were not submitted as they've been removed from the project. The existing light fixtures will remain on the driveway, and some additional lighting will be placed in the rear employee lot, will be upgraded to LED lighting. But the driveway will maintain the existing light fixtures.
So there'll be
The-
lighting all around the facility, around the back now?
That has yet to be designed, but there will be wall-mounted lighting on the building. There'll be wall packs by the entrances on the rear of the building.
And then out in the parking area?
The parking area will have, well, the existing will be upgraded to a more appropriate light fixture, the ones that were submitted, the cut sheets were submitted with the application, and then 2 additional light fixtures in the employee parking lot. But all the existing poles that are out there on the approach, the driveway approach to the property will not be upgraded.
And then are there any signage upgrades that you need at the entrance to the facility?
There will not be. The existing sign will remain as is.
Okay. And then last time, there was concern from the neighbors about the parking on the back side of the facility, of light shining into their yard and being able to see the cars in the parking lot. Have you addressed the buffering in there?
Correct. We have added landscaping to screen the property, the parking lot to the adjacent properties. There'll be a row of evergreens along that frontage, which is shown on the landscape plan.
Is that up on a berm, or is that just,
That's not on the board. I do have a landscape plan though. It was sheet L1. And I'm not a landscape architect, so I couldn't tell you. There's 3 different varieties of evergreen bushes, taller bushes that will go along to supplement the existing trees that are along that.
so when the proposed ones are planted, at what height will they be?
5 feet 6 inches, so 5.5 feet.
And you don't have a picture of that, right? Of what's proposed for that?
I don't have a picture of the
I don't have that. Oh.
they are white fern, Serbian spruce, and a white spruce, or a white pine spruce.
And can you show up there where that berming would go, where the pine trees or the spruces would go?
You can't really see it on 3D rendering. It would be over here, but on these plans, I can show you the landscape. It's probably this way.
I'll sure just throw my name down. It's okay. Typical woman, you know. All right, so these are the neighborhoods, the backyards of the neighbors,
That's
right?
the property line.
Okay.
They do, the neighbor has, up to here, there is a current privacy fence that runs along the property line. It's the
Okay.
fence, not
All right,
the applicant's fence.
I'll just share that. Everybody.
That's the bigger one of that one.
And then I just have one more question. One concern that came from the Conservation Board was that the new roof area is not allowing for all the stormwater to be routed into the rain garden. Did you address that into any of your comments back to them?
Can you repeat that? What was the comment?
They said their concern was that the new roof area is not allowing for all stormwater to be routed to the rain garden in the courtyard.
That is correct. Some of the roof runoff is directed into the rain garden, to the 2 rain gardens. Some of the is into what the DEC defines as tree planting areas, which is essentially a lawn it has a splash pad, and then it'll go into a lawn that has trees. Those are in the back side of the building. And then the runoff from the parking lot will go into the grass area, including the shrubs and filter areas, what the DEC considers them.
Okay.
The answer to the summary is that everything is going to a DEC-approved practice, but not to the rain gardens. The rain gardens are taking a bulk of it, but not all of the new runoff.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yep.
All right.
Anybody else on the board, questions?
Yeah, Adam, I had one question. The landscape buffering, I believe it's on the west side. What is the distance from where the new asphalt ends to the property line?
You're referring to the expansion of the
The
parking lot
expansion,
to the property
correct,
line?
to the
It ranges from anywhere from 32 feet to 36 feet from the proposed property line. It's not a perfect perpendicular or
Okay.
parallel line.
Thank you.
You mentioned that that fence that's there currently is not, it's a neighbor's fence.
Correct.
How far off your property line is that fence?
I don't know that answer. The fence is very close to the property line.
Okay.
It's a matter of feet. It's not like the fence is in the middle of their yard. It's right along the property line.
Okay. Back to the lighting. There's a current, like a dusk to dawn type barn light. Is that what you would propose to replace with, you mentioned an LED street light? Or an
Correct.
LED?
Correct.
So that would be kind of a full cutoff. My guess would be some of the concerns of the neighbors might be that there's a glare, and I would imagine that additional concerns would be more glare. So replacing those or changing those to something that shielded
Correct.
the visible
They're LED.
light would be.
They're solid state area lighting, so they're only shining light on certain areas. They're LED, so they're much more directional. I could show you the proposed light contours. It's not accurate for the actual roadway because those lights are not being replaced, but
So this plan here was proposing these to be replaced.
correct.
And the current plan is these to stay along the driveway, the coach lamps along the driveway, and then these would be new,
Correct.
but full cutoff. Okay. This would be something that I would, if you could have whoever did that resubmit that without that
We can.
having a change, because this is going to be pertinent to the application. Anybody else want to see this?
I got it.
Okay. Anybody else have?
I just have one question, Adam. On the generator you have, that's facing the neighbors. It's on that side of the facility. What kind of generator is it? Is it a whole facility generator? It doesn't look big enough to be, but I can't tell. So could you talk a little bit about that? How much, what's the decibel level of it, and when are you going to exercise it? Usually it's on a weekly basis, but I don't know what time of day or night you're going to do that.
I don't have too much information on the generator. I know it's natural gas. It's an emergency generator. It will have, it will be enclosed in a noise barrier case.
Okay?
I did not bring the natural gas spec, generator spec with me tonight. That can be provided though.
Is that just to provide like emergency lighting and emergency?
It's just emergency generator. It's
okay.
just in case of an emergency. So I don't believe it'd be run once a week. It'd be more like a.
Typically
once-
you exercise them weekly.
Okay. I didn't know if
So-
it was once a month.
For
or
how
something.
long? Usually.
15 minutes to a half an hour.
Okay.
So if it's loud, it's going to impact the neighborhood. So I just want to make sure that that's attenuated, the sound is. That's all.
We got just one question. What about with the increase in the building and stuff, now what about the HVAC? Would that be considerable increase in that, or does that stay the same?
No, there'll be a whole new HVAC system for the expansion.
The same spot there on that side of the building?
This is showing the proposed locations of the HVAC systems. This one is, let me get my bearings straight. This is a brand new unit. There's an existing unit you can't see, but it's right here. That's an existing, it's there today. So this is a new unit, and there's another unit, and this is a new unit right here. This is an existing unit. Both the existing units will get new enclosures and landscaping around them. Currently, they are just wood fencing, wood privacy fencing, and they're gonna get an aesthetic improvement.
Okay.
What about the kitchen facilities? Any improvements to kitchen facilities for this?
The kitchen facilities are remaining the same. They're not doing any expansion to those. There is a new dining room, but there won't be any cooking done. There's just going to be a prep room. So there will be no new cooking areas.
That's what I'm thinking about, like exterior fans on the building from the kitchen or nothing?
Nothing like that.
Okay.
There's a new dining room off to the back side, but it'll have warming pads and things of that nature, not actual stove and tabletop cooking facilities in it.
Great, thanks, Adam.
Any other questions from the board? All right, thank you. Would anyone in the audience like to comment on this application? Yes, ma'am? Come on up, if you could state your name and address and for the record, and then address your comments to the board, please.
My name is Mary Williams. I live at 137 Winterset Drive. When I was here last, of course, it was addressing the additional parking. Obviously, it seems as though there's going to be some landscaping done. My question, too, is with regard to the couple of zoning variances that are required. Or is this zoning, one of the zoning variances, is that also for the parking lot?
Yes.
So
Yes.
that requires a variance
Correct,
to move that closer to our property?
correct,
Okay. And that will be addressed next week?
yes.
Okay. And the other zoning variance, what is that in reference to? Is that going out the back of the building towards the holding pond?
It's, the second one is expansion of pre-existing non-conforming use. So when this was built was, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark or Zach, but when the structure was built, it predated the zoning.
Right.
So after the fact, they create these zoning laws, and this happens to not fit in that zoning district, so it becomes a pre-existing non-conforming use.
Right.
So it just,
And some of that property was purchased, because the zoning laws went into effect when, in 1981? And so the additional property was purchased by Penfield Place in 1991. So they purchased the additional property knowing that there were already, it had already been zoned, and that if they wanted to do anything, make any changes to it, they would have to obtain a zoning variance, correct?
Zach, do you,
Yeah, when you hear the word expansion to pre-existing non-conforming use, it's yes, it means they're building onto it, but it's not encroaching into that rear parcel that they have. It's all staying on this property.
Okay.
However, that has to come from the zoning board, which is at that meeting next week, along with the parking setback variance. It's
Okay.
an area, it's a buffer variance because of the distance from a
Moving
different.
it, because
yes, a
obviously
differently zoned,
It's supposed to be what,
Property.
50 feet? Is that what
Correct.
it's supposed to be? And it'll now be,
anywhere from
36.
Okay.
32 to 36 based on.
so that requires a zoning variance to
Yep.
move that closer. How about such thing with, in terms of landscaping? You mentioned that there would be trees being added, whatever. Is that, and somebody asked about a berm. Is that going to be on a berm, or would a berm be possible to, again, make that parking less noticeable? And then the other concern that we would have too is that by advancing the parking lot, you're also perhaps creating drainage problems, and we already know there's drainage problems in that area.
I think with those questions, the board's going to take those questions, and we'll give the applicant another opportunity to answer those questions once you're done with
Okay.
yours.
Okay. And the other thing that you mentioned was the, that holding pond. You said that part of the holding pond is not on the property of Penfield Nursing Home?
Part of what Mr. Frosino was describing is that it's called an outfall structure, which means part of that drainage system altogether actually takes place on a neighboring parcel. That pond, though, however, that you're referencing, is on that 1700B parcel in the rear.
Okay, a triangular piece.
Yep, and the town will be asking for or requiring a inspection and access easement to go in and regularly check that facility back there to make sure it's functioning properly.
Okay, so then, whose property is that on?
It will be the pond?
The pond is on Penfield Place's property now, correct? Okay. But I thought there was something mentioned with regard to,
Yeah, part of the structure, and Adam will have to correct me if I'm mistaken. Oh, it's on that, which parcels? Yep. No, part of it, okay. Yeah, so I'm looking at the subdivision map that was provided by the
Okay.
applicant, and it outlines where the pond structure is.
Right.
And part of it flows through the back property line, so I was a little bit mistaken. Not the entire pond is on that back triangle. It actually is located on part of the neighboring property to northeast.
okay,
And that's what they're approaching that neighbor about, and securing the necessary rights to inspect that and make sure that there is proper access to it to make sure it's all working.
okay,
That's something we will follow up with internally between our planning department and our engineering department to make sure that all that happens properly.
okay. Is there any reason why the parking could not be, rather than creating the 2 rows in the back, and I think we mentioned this the last time we were here, why the additional parking couldn't be moved towards the front where it doesn't impact any residential areas whatsoever? You have all the property in front of the nursing home. The nursing home sits way back from the road. I mean, there's a lot of lawn space there that I would think could also be utilized for the additional parking. So, I guess that's
All
my
right.
comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak? Yeah, come on up.
We are all the 3 neighbors right here that all back up. I will come.
I was not dressed for the event. I don't
You're
know if this gets
fine.
my good side. Mary O'Connell, I live at 129 Winterset Drive. So as you look at this property, there's 3 houses that are basically directly affected. My house, which is 129 Winterset Drive, which is the fenced house. And then Mary and Dave's house, which is right next to me, which is open in the back, and you can walk through the parking lot sort of and go into their yard. And then the Ertles, which are the next house down. And so all 3 of us have been talking about the impact here, and we're very supportive of additional, housing for elderly. I think that's, just a fact that's going to happen in our community. So the biggest concern we have is the parking. I would say the second concern is the noise, and then the third concern is the lighting, and then the fourth concern would be privacy. So I've lived in this house at 129 Winterset Drive for 16 years. We have 2 children that live there. There's a playground in our backyard, and it's close to the fence line, and you can hear the comings and goings of people in the backyard from the nursing home. You can smell the smoke from when they're having their breaks and they go out there to smoke. You can hear the cars turn on and turn off, and the lights come into our yard at night, even though the prior owners of my house built a fence there. It's much worse in the winter when there's no, because the trees there are not evergreen that are in the back, and I'm presuming those trees would be removed in connection with the proposed extension. You're going to leave those existing trees? Because I drove back there today, and I think that if you need the setback, you would hit the trees. So unless for the parking.
Those trees are proposed to stay, and additional evergreen trees are proposed to be to provide additional
Right,
buffer.
yeah. I heard that. It wasn't clear to me where the buffered trees were going to be placed, whether they would include along the fence line. I think the young woman had asked that question, and we didn't have copies of the documents to know where the tree line will start, but
Closer to the property line, so probably in between the fence and those existing trees.
no, but the question would be, will it run in the area, the length of the proposed buffering? Will it start all the way down at the end of the fence and run all the way up, all the way over towards the Ertles property, or will it only start where the fence ends?
Currently on this proposed plan, I don't know if the plan is up, it doesn't look like that's a landscape plan. The trees look like they basically cover the parking lot on the, let's call it the west side of the
Yep.
parking lot, up just curving around the northwest corner.
But where do they start?
They start,
Because there's a dumpster, and then there's
just
parking.
to the north of that enclosure.
Okay. So the dumpster's not an enclosure, it's just a dumpster.
It will be.
Okay, so these are my suggestions as a tax-paying resident of the jurisdiction. I would really like, as my neighbor Mary articulated, there's tons of property here, and there's a lot of property even on the east side and on the back side where there's no neighbors that would be impacted. So right now, the way that it's set up, we already have, and it was pre-existing to me purchasing the property, but we already have noise from the dumpster, we have lighting issues, we have privacy issues, and we have security issues with, residential area and employees coming back and forth. So I would like to see the town and these kind gentlemen work together to try to figure out if there's a way you could move the parking to not be where it exists. And if insisting on leaving where it exists, I don't want it expanded.
Okay.
The last thing I'd like to mention, and I know that Mary had mentioned this, is that we have a significant water problem in our neighborhood. So the Monroe County Water Authority and the town has been to my house numerous times with the dredging of that area in the back. And, who knows what happens environmentally when all that happens, but now there's groundwater leaking from my front yard. So my hill is sort of on a slope, and Mary and Dave have lived there longer than I have, and there never was a groundwater problem until the dredging had been done. And now there's a groundwater problem. And I'm concerned that with the construction of this facility, unless water issues, not just drainage issues from the roof line into that pond, but the construction-related water issues will cause more water damage in the community. And numerous people have told me that there's a significant water issue in our area. So I really want that to be addressed as well, and I'm concerned about how the construction would impact that. And then as Mary articulated, if you guys are going to approve the ability for them to expand parking, I think they need to do a better job on the landscaping side of the structure to put more of a raised berm or something like that in place. And I also would like to see this lighting in the employee lot, wall-mounted lighting by the entrances to the rear of the building, and 2 additional light fixtures. I think there's going to be a significant additional amount of light coming in, and those are all our bedrooms that look back on there, so I really prefer not to have that happen. So once again, it just seems to me that living in a community, if we could accommodate each other's needs, and the applicants could consider moving the parking lot altogether. I know that if you guys did that, my children and I would come as volunteers and work at the nursing home to, show that we're supportive of this. But it really, it's probably one of the biggest hindrances I worry about, not just, my property value, but we've got little kids playing in the backyard all the time there, and, you can hear everything. And the other thing I'd like to mention is, even if you can't move the parking structure, could you please move the dumpster? Because it's really loud.
Do our best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to comment? Speechless. 145, okay.
Reiterate our comments.
Oh, with regard to the dumpster being empty, which is always at between 4 and 4:30 in the morning.
Is there an ordinance on what time dumpsters can be picked up?
Let's
Because-
we'll check on
It's very loud. Yeah.
that. Okay. Great, thank you everyone for coming. If you have any final comments, if not, that's okay too. Thank you for your presentation. If anyone from the board has any other further comments, welcome to. Yeah, please.
I just wanted to address the one, the lighting concern. I just wanted to reiterate to the neighbors that the existing light fixtures would be replaced in that back area by the employee lot, which are currently more residential style that shoot out and provide the more floodlights that go over garages. And the proposed lighting would be commercial style lighting, dark sky compliant, LED, solid state lighting, which means there is no glare. The lights don't. So the actual lighting would be an improvement, not a disadvantage to you.
Right.
It should actually be better. Even with the 2 additional units? Yes, those will be shooting down and towards the building, away from your house. And
Didn't you say they were on the building?
there are some on the building, but then
The building is pointing at our home.
If,
correct. Today they are, but the proposed lighting is much more sophisticated than what's up there today. And it's all glare-free, dark sky compliant. So I just wanted to emphasize that lighting will actually, it will improve from what's out there today. Today is not a standard lighting design in that back corner.
okay, thank you. Yeah, please come up.
I'm sorry. On the east side, where you said that there was going to be some additional parking over here, so how many spots are you going to have over there?
For environmental reasons, the town set. Sorry. I also wanted to emphasize that we did look into putting as much parking as we could on the east side, but they have environmental codes for the town, the EPODs, and that's a steep slope EPOD, so we cannot add any more parking. We put as many spots as we could on the east side.
But what about over here?
That's the east side.
I thought this was the front. So you have parking in the front right now? Because there's
There's
existing
existing
parking.
parking in the front. correct.
So, and there's landscaping here that's not on a hill structure. So if you took that landscaping off and put parking in there.
The whole site, you go up to get to the site. It's all kind of uphill. So yes, there's.
I mean, I know it may be a slightly more cost, but it seemed to me like you could take some of this area right here that isn't as sloped and reinforce it, because I know businesses that I've worked for have done that kind of thing.
I'll respond if it's okay.
Sure.
I don't want to go against the policies here, but the parking that we're adding is all employee parking, and it's not common practice to have the employees park in the front and have those spots filled. Those are usually reserved for guests of the residents. So the new parking is going off to the side, where all the employees must enter. They all enter this door right here.
Right,
That's the
but
employee
I
entrance. So
understand
there's
that's your
logistical-
preferred.
there's logistical
But you
reasons,
could
that's
have
all.
employees parking with guests. There's no reason you can't.
If you could continue to address your comments to us, I don't really want to start a fight or anything here.
Oh, there's no fight.
So,
This is all very friendly, as I've articulated. It's really hard to do that, I mean, I'm not a big person that goes to town board meetings, but, I think it would facilitate greater communication for the people to be able to talk to each other. But this is not contentious. We are supportive of the project. We just would really, really, really like people to understand that there's a significant impact to these 3 homes on the way that the expansion of the parking is proposed to be done.
understood.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else going once, going twice? Closed. All right. we'll call this public hearing closed. Thank you very much for coming, and have a safe, warm drive home.
Can the residents, can they look at that, like the landscape and stuff that's on the website, right?
The website only has a site plan on it.
Okay.
We do have the plans available up in the office for them to come look at.
Okay.
We can email it to them if they
Yeah.
want under stop by and give them a hard copy.
It clearly, from a site planning standpoint, makes the most sense to have the parking, whereas I drove up there, the additional expansion doesn't really seem to be that big of a expansion, that significant of an expansion.
You're going to have to ask for a variance in the zoning board for that because of the buffer zone.
So all the big trees stay. Bring it around to the other side, the slopes are it'd be terraced.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking very difficult.
Plus, it's an EPOD.
Right.
With those existing trees, is there any possibility for any kind of berm?
I mean, we'd have to look at the drainage patterns in there. There's existing maples on, I think there's maples on that side. I have to look closer. Without leaves, it's hard to tell, but existing
Slopes.
trees on the west side, and we'd have to look at, not covering up the root system.
Right.
You kind of fight between, covering up the
You gotta
roots,
be
you
far enough
suffocate the
away from the
trees.
trees, yeah.
Berm it in there. The first property on the west, there's a fence basically from here around the property. So this is fairly well buffered. This piece is open
Want me to grab the
on that
pictures?
back. Yeah, if you want to
Bring up the pictures.
Photos we
I
took.
guess one question would be, would they be open to putting up a fence? More of a privacy fence?
Well, I would, a berm is nice, but I think, a berm by itself isn't going to do it unless you make it 10 feet high. And if you plant a 4-foot berm and you put trees on them, our experience shows they usually end up dying.
Right.
Unless you irrigate them.
That's your potential area for a berm, and there isn't that much space.
No.
this space in here. So this would be the supplemental pines,
Yeah,
up
they're gonna
behind
put
this
the
first
pines
row
are
of
gonna go
trees. and
12
the
12
fence.
of them, right? 12 pines all in there. And that's
How
going to
tall are
help
they?
significantly.
5 to 6
5.5
foot?
feet,
5.5?
6 feet, is that? Yeah.
Right. I don't know if it would help, but maybe if the trees are just a little taller when they're planted, instead of a 5-foot tree. I mean, I'm 5 foot, so it just doesn't seem like if it's that much, when it's not gonna be on a berm. That's all. Sure, no, here I am, tree side.
Yes, this, sorry to interrupt. This is a public meeting. This is not a time for discussion amongst either the applicant or the residents, but you are welcome to listen to the board's debate and discussion after the meeting if you want to come back and sit and listen to their discussion.
And then with Roseanne, I think enhanced buffering of some type. Maybe if it's not a continuous fence, you intersperse the fence with the trees somehow to give the residents more of a buffer. And something, bigger trees would probably work too. Instead of 5.5 to 6, it's rather 8 to 10.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess that's a question. We want Bruce to look at the landscape plan. I know Bruce, we've gone back and forth with him before. There's a fine line between putting in trees that are big at the start, but that seems to, they're stunted for a year or two before they kind of grow from there, versus smaller trees that seem to grow faster. So I know he's kind of always, there's a fine line between getting really big and stunting, but we can ask Bruce to take a look at the landscape plan and see what his thoughts are. If there's, he has recommendations on one varietals of pines. I know there's a lot of different stuff out there with Austrian pines that have a blight out there now. There's a couple others.
Right, you might want to plant 2 variety of trees.
And I think they have three different types that they've proposed, but I know Bruce,
So if you don't get- if you
knows
get a
much
blight,
better than I
it
do
doesn't
on
wipe
that.
out the whole-
Right, the whole thing is looked out, right?
We want to kind of go down the list of things that I heard, concerns, and then basically kind of 2 actions. One, whether this board wants to send a letter of support to the zoning board. Zoning board does have a meeting next week. Second item would be a tabling resolution with what additional items, responses you want to see from the applicant before you're ready to make any sort of decision. I don't know if you want to start with questions, concerns first. Obviously, lighting.
Yeah, well,
I think we need to see a
lighting plan.
definitely need to see a photometric plan. Showing the foot candles and what I know they provided the cut sheets of what they're providing, but we need to see the building mounted lights. We need to see the parking lot lights of what's being changed.
And where those are going.
Where those are. I know they said they're doing dark sky compliant lights, which will be a great improvement over, I call it an old farm style barn light in the back. But a lighting photometric plan is needed for that. Bill, you raised the concerns about the generator.
And I should have included the HVAC systems. Make sure that they're quiet.
Well, I think, one, they should provide what the specs of those are, what the operating sound decibels are on them, what, as part of the property maintenance agreement. We can address dumpsters in a second. But they should provide, what the normal maintenance are on those. They need to usually run weekly, and then once a month they need to run, different time frames of when those are done, and then, what sound attenuation off the property that is. So, whether they need to build a brick wall around that or something more than just landscaping to buffer the noise.
Or vinyl fence.
Or vinyl fence, whatever is going to offer a lot of sound attenuation. So I think.
And the same for the ground-based HVAC units. They're ground level. They're probably going to be louder than the generator. They're going to be on all the time.
Well, the HVAC can run anytime. The generator you can manage when you got to cycle in.
And, with HVAC units, you've got fans, you've got belts, they tend to squeal, they can get loud.
Okay. So we'll ask for the specs on those, and then also what they propose for sound attenuation or buffering of those. Obviously, we have concerns, questions about the parking being closer to the property line. They do need to go to the zoning board for a variance for that. Being in the district that they're in, they go closer. The one question did come up about the pre-existing non-conforming. This is the only district we have that does allow
B&R is the only
B&R
zoning
in
district.
it. Actually, the R115 district, they could install it at Winterset
Yeah.
as an existing condition. So basically, it's more of a gap in our zoning code than it is a need for an expansion to a variance. And so the LB district allows medical facilities.
Residential.
Winterset allows medical facilities. MR allows it, as well as Four Corners in the R115. So it's more of a gap in our zoning code at B&R. Actually, that's something we're updating with the general code update to allow it in there. It's currently not changed. It's currently as it is. As AJ, had stipulated when they built this building was prior to 1981, it fully complied with our zoning code. We actually, so we created the hardship around them. We rezoned the property and just didn't include proprietary healthcare facilities in a B&R district. But, they could go on to Winterset if they wanted to buy a couple of houses. They could put a healthcare facility on Winterset or any other residential street in town. Residential allows it. So that's just a little clarification on that variance. But they do need a variance for the parking to be closer to the property line than what basically is the buffer between a B&R zone and a residential R115 zone. So this is the buffer that they need to maintain there. I know we asked them as whether those can be land banked or not. They are showing an access over here that the fire marshal requested, and they've shown some additional parking spaces there. I haven't seen the response, so that's one thing we need to see is responses, and they said they had a draft letter. We need to see the draft PRC responses as whether those could be land banked. I think the one thing that would be a benefit is right now, all the parking is on the left side, so basically most people pull in head first, park, and the headlights are facing the residences. The new proposal puts parking on the inside, so most of the people as we like to park closer, would face the inside, so most of the headlights be facing this way, but they're showing a second row of parking on the outside that would be similar to that. So I think facing the cars internally with that layout is better. As Zach brought up here, so now this currently doesn't exist on this side, so they're adding this additional piece of parking. The pavement exists, but it's not striped for parking. So
Right, the stripes are more on
the stripes are all over. The stripes are like right here, right now. So you pull in, and the parking is in this area. This is your drive aisle. So they're flip flopping that. I guess the question on the table is whether those could be land banked and built in the future if needed, or.
Well, how many employees are they going to have?
I believe they said
34.
34 at their peak.
How many spots are there on
I
the
think there's 20.
They show
proposal?
39 there, but then there's some in the front and there's some on the other
Total of
side. But it's
54
I'm sorry, Zach?
around the whole facility. I didn't count what's here alone. The whole facility will have 54.
Looks like that says 39 there.
So probably 39 up there.
Yeah, okay, let's see.
okay. So we'll look for responses on that as whether those could be land banked or possibly located in another location. I know we do have EPOD on the other side. We can look at that more closely. They show some parking along that emergency access drive.
Where's the EPOD line?
This is
Is that it?
Yeah.
That may be the
part of it.
Or is that a tree line?
Part of more of a tree line disturbance.
It could be a woodlot EPOD, or steep slope comes down there somewhere. But
Yeah.
possibly they could double load. I don't know if this area over here could be some additional parking spaces on that side of that access drive, but that's something we'll ask them to look at. As far as the dumpster being emptied, as part of this board's typical approval will be a property maintenance agreement. That's something we've dealt with at Baytown and other spots like that. In that property maintenance agreement, we can dictate that they have different hours for their
4 or 4:30 standard.
4 or 4:30 we allow snow removal at certain hours, but things that can be regulated, deliveries and stuff like that, we do have noise ordinances for. So that would be something that this board could add to their property maintenance agreement, is to regulate.
I think residential refuse collection, garbage collection starts at 7.
Our
6?
Mine is
Yeah,
5:45,
Yeah.
6:30. Yeah.
6 o'clock.
So,
Yeah, if I don't get it out there,
I mean, that's something, we can look at it, but I think that's something, they can work with their garbage hauler to, adjust those hours. Snow plowing, other things like that.
Send them over to AJ's neighborhood.
They can, the existing dumpster enclosure is more of just kind of trees and stuff now. It needs to be a formal enclosure. It's up to the board as whether you want to see a board-on-board fence or block or something else. Mention the building, but we're going to look for something that's a formal enclosure, not a screen with landscaping on that.
to match a building.
Yes.
Yep.
Board on board is exist.
Drainage questions from the neighbors. We can look at that and verify, make sure that the additional runoff from this is not being directed towards them, and whether they need to add a swale or something in here to redirect that water. We'll review that. As far as a berm with landscaping on it, with the existing trees on the back side. So this is the landscape plan. Thank you, Zach. So these are the existing maple trees here, and then this is the supplemental pine plantings they're showing there. And then this is the existing fence, this one little line here, and then the fence going that way. That's an existing utility pole in the corner. So that kind of shows you where that fence, existing wood fence is. And then this is the part that's open to the neighbors over here that they can see. And this is where that existing light is with the big
Barn style light.
Thank you. So changing that out, these are the supplemental plantings. But there's not a lot of room between this fence. There's some existing vegetation there and the pines, and then the root system for that. I don't know about putting a berm in there and suffocating. You don't want to kill off the existing maples if you cover up the root system.
Right. Good in theory, but practice, it could be a disaster.
Yep. What else? The dumpster, we talked about that, the lighting
What's the deal with
concerns.
this groundwater?
Winterset and Heather Drive have had groundwater issues in the past. They are at the base of the hill. We've worked with different neighbors, on it. It just seems to find a low spot. It comes at the top of the hill, it soaks into the ground, and then water finds the easiest way out. And a lot of times when you dig basements and dig other appurtenances for new homes, you kind of tap into that groundwater area. I know we've worked up in the far end of Heather Drive up over in here doing some drainage improvements. We, as the town has worked in this back piece, the pond we were talking about earlier, trying to do some mitigation and treatment back in this area and here. We're looking at their plans here to direct more of that water to the front. As the neighbors had said, they had a lot of green area in the front. That's DEC's preference, is to take the water out. They have a rain garden in the middle. Here they're proposing to take some of the downspouts collected here and take a lot of the water out and around and then treat it out in front of their yard, which would hopefully get it out from leaching towards the neighbors, and take it more towards the front, not towards the street. So I'll take a closer look at the plans there, make sure that if that parking's there, it doesn't impact the neighbors additionally than that. What else does the board have concerns? We can incorporate all these into your tabling resolution letter to the applicant to have them take a closer look at those items.
Yeah, that's.
So I guess we need two actions. One is the board supportive of an expansion to the pre-existing non-conforming use?
Yes.
Is the board supportive of the requested parking variance towards the neighbors? So the reduced buffer to the neighbors, the board is supportive of that?
Yes.
So we need
Vote for a letter of
so we need a
support.
letter sent to the zoning board.
Would be appropriate, screening.
Okay.
Bill had the first motion.
Oh, okay, thank
Need a
you, I'm
second?
sorry.
Second.
Okay, Hetzke,
Aye.
Bastian, Danicourt,
Aye.
Canower,
Aye.
Tidings.
Aye.
Okay, so we'll prepare that letter on your behalf, send it to the zoning board. Anybody want to make a motion to send the tabling resolution with those items we discussed further? Sure.
I'll second.
Hetzke,
Aye.
Bastian,
Aye.
Danicourt,
Aye.
Canower,
Aye.
Tidings.
Aye.
Okay, we'll send those items, get it off to the applicant, look for further information, and then once we get it, we'll get it back to you guys, and this will be a tabled item until your work session on the 26th.
All right. Anything else? You signed the maps.
Yep.
We got those signed, we went through the rest of our miscellaneous agenda items.
So we're done?
That's it.
All right, well, I guess we'll
Bill's got to
adjourn. Till next time.